Welcome to the Personal Development Mastery Podcast. I'm 𝘁ᗸ𝗲𝗄𝘆 and my mission is to inspire you to rise up, grow, stand out and take action towards the next level of your life. I interview leaders, influencers, entrepreneurs, authors, exceptional people who can and will inspire you to improve your life. Tune in for 2 episodes each week and make sure you subscribe to the podcast to get the episodes as soon as they are released. In today's show, I am delighted to speak with 𝘁ᗸ𝗲𝗄𝘆𝘀. Paul, you are a Sydney-based 7-figure entrepreneur and coach who combines science and spirituality to crack the code of fulfillment. You built over a dozen businesses in the past 25 years, and you say some made millions whilst others failed miserably. Throughout the years, you spent over $500,000 on personal development courses. You've attended the majority of the well-known seminars, listened to personal development legends, applied everything they said, and that made you millions with your businesses, but still something didn't feel right, like no fulfillment, as you say. And now you have developed your own mastery program so others don't have to spend this kind of time and money figuring out how to become fulfilled. Paul, it is my real joy to be speaking with you today on the podcast. Thank you.
Thank you, Ike. It's an absolute pleasure to be here with you and share our stories together. So thank you.
It's a truly fascinating topic. And Paul, I would like to start with a little bit of background and story. Out of what I shared, that little snippet earlier, what makes the biggest... what strikes me the most in that story, and that's I would like your comment on that, is that keeping on going, having the success, but still not feeling inside the fulfillment which turned you around at some point. So I would like you to paint a picture for us and take us back and describe a little bit of the transformation.
Sure, happy to. So I'll go back to when I first came across personal development, which was when I was about 19 years old. And I was involved in network marketing. So if you've ever been exposed to network marketing, they plug you into the system. And the system is all about the tapes and the audios and the seminars and the events. And it's really designed to expand your mind and help you set dreams and goals. And at that point, I thought, wow, this is incredible. There's so much learning and growth and all these people are really cool and all these things I don't know. And so I went on that journey for a few years, didn't make anything out of it. So that was a failure from my definition of success at the time. But looking back now, I realized I succeeded tremendously from a personal growth and an expansion point of view. It showed me something that I had never seen before. And that kind of triggered this curiosity around what was possible. You know, how did these people become so successful doing network marketing? You know, making 6, 7, 8 figures a year, living the dream of the life of their dreams, traveling the world, making an impact, which really resonated with me. And you know, early on at around 22, I had offers for contracts in businesses that I was running. And overnight, I was offered millions of dollars a year to do a particular job. And I was in bed lying awake at night. I couldn't sleep thinking, what am I going to do? I need money to make myself happy. But now that I've got all this money, I was kind of future projecting at the time, thinking, now that I've got all this money, what next? So all these goals that I'd had to achieve and build some wealth and stability and buy property and then figure out what life was all about and why I'm here, potentially I had realized that at 21, 22. So I had this conflict, this internal conflict with, I need money to make me happy, but money's not going to make me feel fulfilled. So that was when this journey started, really. And so I went to countless programs and courses, seminars, legends, everywhere from business courses through to shamans, through to astrologers, to all these different types of things. And I learned something out of everything, but there was always this feeling of not enough, going through that journey, and a feeling of, well, who am I? Who the heck really am I? And what am I here for? So it wasn't until about 3 years ago that I came across a number of other different systems which were more around the esoteric side of things, so astrology specifically, many different types of astrology. And years ago, or for many years, I used to think, gosh, this is all just, kind of fluffy stuff and for hippies and whatever. And I'm a business guy, right? So I'm all about business and marketing and results. But I met some interesting people on my journey who were very successful, and they introduced me to their astrologers, and that got me a few sessions to comprehend what that was all about. And it changed everything. So what it gave me was I was no longer chasing a course or someone else's blueprint for success, because that's their blueprint. What I discovered was my own blueprint. Who is Paul Shepherd really? And what is Paul Shepherd really here for? What are his strengths? What are his weaknesses? What are the shadows? What's the role that he's here to play in this lifetime? How he's going to make an impact in the world? Who he's here to help? Why he's here to help them? And that clarity changed everything. When you get told things that resonate at the core as to who you really are, you can't sleep. You're awake with excitement going, oh my gosh, this is incredible. Like how was I not told this 25 years ago? The amount of money I was spent on programs, the amount of time trying to find myself. And then all of a sudden within a 2-hour session, I've got absolute clarity of things that I'd never even thought about. And it resonated because there were patterns showing up in my life over these 25 years. And these patterns that were showing up were articulated to me in language that I hadn't heard before, but it all made sense. So there was just this inner knowing. So that was essentially the tipping point. And obviously then, what I'm doing now is helping other people do that same thing, Agi, is how do you help other people shortcut that 25 years of learning and the amount of money invested to figure out who you truly are, so you can get on with your mission in life and achieve fulfillment, much quicker than having to wait 25 years like I did. So I hope that answers the question.
Yes, and I have more.
Go for it.
So what I understand then is that what you're telling me, that during all these courses that you were doing, you were not having this kind of realization, and it was only at some point afterwards that something opened up inside and you realized. So during all those other personal development courses and being there, wasn't there something like that before? In other words, my question is, did it happen fairly suddenly, or was it really bubbling up and gradually working for all this time for you to reach that point?
It's a good question, Agi. I think there was this bubbling up over a period of time. So it's this conscious awareness. I started to become more consciously aware of how my body was responding to things. Mm-hmm. I'd go to a certain event and I wouldn't be as all in and excited. I had this resistance and I could feel it. Oh. But I never had that resistance explained to me. Think of it like your inner CEO or your inner guide. They're guiding you constantly. But we're so in our head, right? And this is a lesson that, younger brother taught me and quite a few people in my life, that, get out of your head and get into your heart. And I couldn't comprehend that, right? I was so in my head from an analytical perspective and business and structure, and that's just how I am. But I always had these feelings that I couldn't actually logically make sense of until I started to test it. And the more I started to listen to that and tune in, and that was predominantly through meditation and contemplation and having time to myself, off technology, more time in nature. So I was able to listen to this inner knowing a lot more. Mm-hmm. And I guess the realization was that stop looking for things outside myself and stop looking for the answers through somebody else, because all the answers are within. The problem is we can't listen to ourselves because we've been so programmed and there's so much chatter going on up in the mind. So the minute I could kind of step out of the head and more into the body and then observe this monkey mind and the chatter that would go on, the more I started to observe things. So that was when things really changed, when I could start to grasp what was taking place, that there's this identity called 𝘁𝗀𝗄𝘆𝘀, but that's just a name. There's this body, there's this spirit, there's this soul. And, you know, you look at people like 𝘁Ärt Tolle talk about, you know, what's the thinker? And when you first hear that, you kind of scratch your head saying, what's the thinker? What's he talking about, right? But when you start to embody that and you start to then observe the thoughts going on, you start to think, oh, okay, so my mind isn't me. Oh, right, okay. So if my mind isn't me, then who am I? And all these questions start to come up. And that was kind of the beginning of a different era for my personal development journey. And I started to look more within as opposed to looking outside myself for answers.
Thank you for that. And I want to explore much more this second part of your journey. Before I do that, I want to discuss a bit more the previous part, you know, all this wealth of information, courses, the people you've met and everything. And I'm sure you have learned unbelievable things, which I'm sure you've also found in all these different seminars, commonalities, things that are maybe the essence of all those programs. Are there any common elements? Is there any essence before one moves to the actually looking inside and maybe I'm confusing you with my question. I was asking two questions at the same time, that's why. So tell me please, Paul, then about the essence of the learnings that you have learned from all these years of the personal development, if there was one or two like that.
Yeah, good question. Look, I think everything's so different, right? A lot of people got different messages. And one of my biggest takeaways looking back on things now was that there was a lot of noise. And because of all that noise that I was consuming on an intellectual level,
yes,
it was silencing, or the noise was too noisy for me to hear myself. So that was the common thing. You know, I think the more spiritual teachings allowed me to tap into hearing myself more. But most of the personal development was up in the head, up in the mind. And that was where I was getting lost, and I was getting more and more off track. And as we kind of touched on before this podcast, it's the whole feather, pebble, rock, brick, and I had a lot of bricks. I've been clubbing a lot of bricks over time. I felt like were failures. So I'd ask myself the question: why is this so painful? Why is there so much struggle at certain periods of my life? And life's been a roller coaster. And now that I look back, I was not on my path. I was doing something I wasn't supposed to be doing. And that's why I got the bricks over the back of the head. So the biggest thing we can all take away is learning our decision-making strategy. What is our decision-making strategy? How does our body communicate with us? Listening to our intuition. And that was my biggest takeaway, was get out of the head, listen to the body, because it always knows best. It holds all the answers for us. Might not hold the answers on how to, manage your team and, manage your finances in a business perspective, or, navigate a certain challenge, in a relationship, but it always knows what's best for us. And it's going to show up in ways that is an energetic response as opposed to words. And that's where we need to then learn what that feeling or that response is. So that was my biggest takeaway. And that even today, looking back, there's different techniques or different things we can do to start to calibrate that intuition. So you get this feeling, and it happens again and again, but you don't know what it means because there's no translation manual. You can't go to Google Translate and type in this feeling and then get a response. It doesn't work like that. So you've got to have a few experiences and test and measure, and then all of a sudden you've now got this feedback loop and you're like, oh, right, that's that feeling again. Yeah, okay, I know it's not good. All right, so do I have to give it a definition? Not necessarily. It just means that I need to avoid that particular situation because it's not meant for me. So that's been my biggest learning out of all of these things. And our body intelligence holds all the answers if we learn how to tap into that.
Amazing. Paul, one more thing that I'm sure you can help with is because there are so many programs out there, and some people might, including me, find it difficult sometimes to choose which one we can do. Not everyone can do the way that you did it. So what's the thing to really help decide which course is for me or which coach is for me? Does it have to do with intuition that you were mentioning, or is it something else?
Absolutely. You got it. Intuition. And that's the challenge, right? Right. Is we see an advertisement, we see a video, and it's so compelling. I mean, they've got the psychology nailed, the music, the lure, the attraction, the promises. It's fantastic. And some of these programs are incredible, don't get me wrong. But you end up finding yourself on this journey for so long and not actually getting what you came for. So we need to learn to shut the noise off. Just switch off the television, turn the marketing off, and feel into a particular program that you're looking at doing. You know, and there's things you can do. You can ask yourself before you go to bed at night, just like, all right, cool. So what I'm tossing up between doing this program and that program. Which one is the best one for me right now? Is it A, B, or is it neither of them? And that might sound crazy, having conversations with yourself, but you'll wake up in the morning. It might be one the next morning, or it might be over a couple of evenings or a couple of nights, but the answers will come to you. You ever had a shower, or you've been in the shower and these ideas come to you?
Yeah.
Right? They're downloads. They're downloads we're getting from the unified field, from our spirit, from our soul, from our guides, whatever you want to call it. But that's information that we're getting. Now, most of us just go, oh, that was just a crazy idea or whatever. But that's the wisdom. That's the real wisdom. That's the stuff that we're meant to listen to. But because our brain's been so heavily trained and our intuition hasn't, we're listening to the wrong messages. So my biggest lesson and my biggest message to everyone out there is essentially, you listen to yourself. You learn to listen to your body. It will always tell you what's right for you. And once you do that, you're now on your path. You've got the least resistance, and you're going to find yourself like very, very quickly and be fulfilled and be making more of an impact and more profit too, by the way, because now you're in flow.
So let's say that there is someone listening now and he finds this very fascinating and he would like to listen more to their intuition, to their inner wisdom, and less to the chatter in the head. What kind of steps can one take to start working towards that direction of realizing the instinct and trusting it as well? Because, as you said, we hear it, we know it, but we just dismiss it.
Right. So I think, and something I've done and with clients as well, is setting up tests. Set up a little experiment, right? You know, if you're a single person, for example, online dating is a thing right now, right? The world's changed. So, you know, you're going to look at someone's profile, whether it's a photo or read their biography, whatever it is, and you're going to get a feeling about that person. You know, forget the attraction for a second.
Yes.
Yeah, there's messages that we're getting all the time. People are always broadcasting something. You can look at a photo and there's people that can read photos like textbooks. They're brilliant at reading energy. And that's something I've learned to do as well. But if you look at, for example, online dating, and you might go through 100 photos and you might say, wow, okay, what feelings came up? So that's a really interesting concept, because you now have, if you connect with someone online, you now have the possibility to have a conversation with them. And you can start to validate those feelings. So what your body's bringing up and trying to tell you, you can start asking the right questions, right? You get a sense of what a person's all about. You know, are they arrogant, or are they a really lovely, sweet person? Are they really scared, fearful person? Are they confident? Are they outgoing? Are they introverted? Do they respect others and your time, or are they really aloof and flaky? So that's just one experiment you could set up. You know, you could then, another experiment you could do is going into the office. How just observing people, you know, and looking at people going, I wonder what they do. I wonder what they're feeling right now. And you start to tune into people's energy and start to feel them out, literally. And some of the best meetings and people that I know that have been in business for a long time now, it's not about the interview process. It's about how they feel somebody out. And that's what they're doing. They're feeling them out energetically to see what they're all about. Great recruiters do this too. So that's a really basic thing you can do, is start to try and validate those feelings with language or with words. So it's you have an assumption. You want to test that assumption by having interactions with that person and asking questions, and see if the responses you're getting are in tune with the feelings you're having. And that builds confidence and then starts to give you that feedback loop. So that's a really effective way of what I call calibrating your intuition. And of course, one of the things that I do now and teach people is to listen to their intuition. There is a specific a blueprint to everyone's decision-making strategy. So and again, it's different for every individual, but through your time of birth, we can actually figure out what that decision-making strategy looks like, and actually teach you the framework, the responses that your body will go through, and the 3 or 4 or 5 step response as to how you can really dial that in and then go out into the field and practice it. Because it's the practice that actually gives you the confidence, not just the intellectual understanding of it, but the actual practice of it and the embodying of it, so that it becomes highly accurate.
I would actually ask you to expand a bit on that, because it might sound a bit mystical, but I want your thoughts on your explanation, because I'm personally intrigued of how does our birth, or who we are, is, you say that it is somehow directly influenced by the universe. Something that's the way I understand it. That's how I'm trying to explain it. Maybe it's not the way that you would put it.
No, you're right. It's so the time we're born, there is this. I mean, the universe. 𝘁ษ์𝗁𝗁 has kind of got the whole science behind this and the quantum mechanics of this holographic universe that we live in, and he's put this theory forward. And there's also this fractal imprint. So if you look at the planets in our solar system, they all represent different energies. And if we look at the exact moment that we're born, we inherit certain energies. Right? And I used to think of this, and I was the biggest skeptic for many years, believe me. You know, being a kind of business person and marketing and just wanting results and things that are tangible, I dismissed this for 20 years.
Yes.
Right. So, but I kept getting that brick slapping me saying, right, like, pay attention, Paul, what is this? So we have this fractal imprint of energy at the moment we're born based on different planetary alignments. And that might sound super woo and like woo and all this kind of rubbish, but go through the experiment. When you go through it and, you put your time of birth in, and the system I've studied is BG5, which is, it's a different language of the human design system, but essentially it's 4 different esoteric systems, and the accuracy is off the charts. So it's a synthesis of Vedic astrology, Western astrology, I should say, the Chinese I Ching, the Brahman chakra system, and the Kabbalah tree of life. Then modern science, all packaged up into a complete system that once you've experienced it, it's kind of hard to explain. You have to experience it to grasp the depth of the wisdom that's shown to you about yourself. And I even the most skeptical people in the world, and I was a big skeptic, believe me, went through this process, and I couldn't believe the level of detail and accuracy it had shown me. So, I think it's pretty hard to criticize something unless you've actually gone through it and experienced it, right? You can't call yourself an expert on a certain topic if you've never read anything about it. So, like you and I argue, we're open-minded, we're curious people, so we naturally explore these things. And I just invite people to explore things that, no matter how crazy they might seem, explore them. What shows up for you might be very surprising. And I've learned that, we can only see through our senses, our 5 senses, less than 1% of all reality. Everything is frequency. And we can only see a certain spectrum of light. We can only hear a certain spectrum of sound. Then you got taste, touch, and smell. And that's only a very, very small percentage, 0.1% or whatever it is. What else is out there? Yeah, that really baffles me to think that there's so much that we don't know. So the more you learn, the more you realize you don't know, and the more you become a student and you humble yourself, because you then enter a different realm of learning, of concepts that science can't explain right now. And that's what I'm most curious about is, I found the biggest answers lie in that space. It's things that science can't explain necessarily. Doesn't mean it's not real. It just means we haven't got the instruments or tools to explain it just yet. So yeah, that's my suggestion on that one.
It's a great one. And it got quite a few twists and turns around the way as well. Would you like to discuss a little bit about what you say, the unique genetic code that each of us has, which I suppose it does not have to do with DNA, doesn't it? You talk about the other characteristics that each of us has uniquely. So it would be good to get your thoughts on that, so I can blend a bit more of this intriguing knowledge that you're sharing.
Yeah, absolutely. So the genetic code essentially is that fractal imprint, that fractal energy imprint that you're given at birth, and that it's almost like language I could use would be like your soul blueprint. Who is Argy really? What is he here for? What is his gift to the world? And the best way I can explain this right now metaphorically is, think of a movie script. Before you were born, Argy, your soul chose to write this script. But the script is only a set of potentials. Doesn't mean it's going to happen. In the real world, in the 3D material world that we're in, we need to take that script to a producer, and they're going to read the script, make edits, and then they might produce it if we're lucky. They're going to hire actors to act in that script, and there's a whole bunch of stuff that goes into the mix. So if your soul wrote this script before it's arrived here on Earth, and again, this might sound really esoteric and out there now, but this is what I've learned over 25 years, then it's now up to you to produce that script in this reality. So you've got all the ingredients, if you will, to produce the script. But you now need to go and learn the skills. And the skills will come very easy to you because you've got the energetic imprint, right? You've got that fractal imprint with the right energetics to go and fulfill. That's why some people are amazing public speakers, others are not. Some people are really good at managing teams, others are not. Some people are great at micro detail, others are big picture. Some people can inspire others and move them where other people are good at running operations for business, for example. So we're all given these different skills and talents. And as we come into organizations and small groups and in pairs with people, this energetic dynamics always change depending on who we're with. So when we get clarity on that, that's when we can truly move forward. We can start to run in life as opposed to constantly hitting the boundaries of failure and success and trying to figure out who we are. So that's how we get in flow. But the genetic code essentially is that blueprint. And perhaps it's something I can do for you we can do another session and I can actually walk you through the fundamentals of your own blueprint if that's something you're happy to share.
Sounds intriguing to
Just
me.
so you can experience it.
Yeah. It's things like that I really can't say no to. They're too fascinating to
Done deal. There we go.
This is amazing. And the fact that you are talking about these things now after having 25 years of this background that you were having, for me shows, if anything else, how important it is, because you might be spending a lot of your time, of your years and effort, money and everything, looking in the wrong direction unless you realize. Tell me, now that you have come to these realizations that you have, how do you see now the personal development events? So, for example, would you attend something like that if you haven't before? But having this new understanding, how would you see the event differently? Would you take different things from it, or would it still be intellectual understanding?
I think I'd go to events now to learn how they run the events, so I could potentially run events. And it's really interesting, Agi, because once you go through the system, energetically you change. This is a cellular reset. You're all of a sudden now becoming yourself. You're becoming the person you're born to be, as opposed to trying to fit into someone else's camp or someone else's system. You're now going through this genetic experiment, if you will, or this cellular reset, I'll call it. Genetic experiment sounds a bit scary. But it's like a cellular reset. Now you're living according to what you're designed to do. And think of a best analogy I can give you is like a goldfish versus a bird, right? A bird can fly, a goldfish can swim. But if a goldfish spends its entire life trying to fly, it's going to feel like a failure, right? I was a goldfish for so long. I was trying to fly with certain people, trying to build big organizations and trying to solve big problems, but that wasn't actually who I was. So I was the goldfish that just needed to recognize that I'm really good in the water. And once I came to terms with that and I stopped comparing myself to other people, all of a sudden there was this level of comfort, this level of knowing, this level of trust in myself. And that's another big lesson I've had is don't compare myself to anyone else, because everyone's got a different journey. At 30, I thought I'd be retired when I was 21. Here I am at 43 and I'm just getting started, right? And when I say retired, I mean retired from having to earn money for a living and having lost it many times. But I had to go through those lessons. Now, had someone have shown me this system 25 years ago, I'd been at a very different place. I wouldn't have had so much struggle, I don't think. I wouldn't have had to go through all the turmoil, the frustration, the pain, the anger, all these negative emotions that we experience. But it's also those emotions that have kept me going to try and find the solution. Where a lot of people might give up with the amount of frustration they go through, or the amount of failure, there was this determination to figure things out. So in answer to your question, would I go through it again? Yeah, look, I think the best investment I would suggest to people is find out who you are first. And that'll help you determine the type of career you're going to succeed at. It'll help determine where you're going to be most fulfilled, how you're going to make the maximum amount of profit in this lifetime. And then I'd go and pursue personal development programs that are more aligned to you as a person, you as an individual, as opposed to a program that's designed for the masses. So you can then start to get, become the sniper. Don't use the nuclear bombs, and then you'll fast track your success, because Now all of a sudden you're not having to test all these different things out. Sure, you're always going to learn something, but if you figure out you first and you get absolute clarity on why you're here, instead of doing business courses, for example, and your mission on this planet is to be a healer, then you'd go and do healing courses. You'd find mentors that are going to help you succeed as a healer, because you've got this natural gravity towards doing these things, which is also part of the awareness function of recognizing why you're here. You're going to be pulled to certain things. So that's my advice to people is if you figure out who you are first and get very clear on that, and there's a whole system and a process I take people through for this, then you can go and select the right personal development programs to fast track your success. So for example, if it was business and you wanted to learn how to do marketing to grow this new business that you've started because you're designed to be in business, then it's going to be a very simple, step process to success. But if you're going to learn courses on NLP, for example, and you're never meant to be an influencer, you're meant to be doing something very different, then it can be a complete waste of time. Sure, you'll learn something, but it'll be a 1% growth instead of a 90% growth. And and if you think about that over a long period of time, spending a lot of money and a lot of time doing courses and getting 1% growth every 6 months, 12 months, every course you do, or you can choose the right course and get a 90% growth, that's a game changer. It's like compounding interest in the financial world.
Thank you. And Paul, actually, I've made some realizations about my own journey doing courses or not doing some courses, because obviously I can't do everything. But what you tell me about the doing a course that does not really relate with what you are meant to be doing. Yes, you'll get a little bit of knowledge, but in the end it was not really a good use of your resources, your time, your money for that, whereas you could have put it into something that aligns with your with who you truly are and really exponentially grow. So I made some thoughts personally about that, and I realized some courses came to mind that I did for the wrong reasons, for the promise that they were offering at the end of it, rather than a true calling, and how different courses have really made a difference on me because they were aligned with what I am naturally inclined in doing, which is this, by the way.
Fantastic.
And,
so let me ask you this.
Sure.
Think about back when those feelings that you had before you did the course. Did you have those feelings? Were you aware of the feelings that your body was bringing up? That, this might not be the best course for me? Or
yes.
Do you actually recall that?
I do.
Right.
Yes. They are feelings. They're not sounds, they are, what we say, gut feeling or bodily sensations that need some kind of interpretation. And
exactly, and that's what I'm talking about, right? It's we don't listen to it because we weren't taught. So I'm glad you actually mentioned that, because that's what I had, but I was thick. I just didn't listen at the time, right? I just kept going and going and going. It was too much testosterone and too much energy. But I'm glad you're aware of it, because it took me into my later years before I started to acknowledge those feelings and become consciously aware of it. So well done. That's awesome.
Thank you. My own life journey brought me the people and the experience to allow me to have that insight at that time in my life. And I think I couldn't help but thinking when you were saying about the 25 years that you spent to reach that, we all have to go through experiences until we actually learn what we're meant to learn. So for some people it might take 25 years, for some people 2, for some people all their life, and some people are completely clueless of what's going on. But these people don't listen to this podcast anyway, so we can
there we go, problem solved.
Paul, I wanted to ask you also, because you mentioned the question finding out who we are. I think that is really the most ancient question, isn't it? Know thyself. Since you have a Greek background as well, it's the oracle of Delphi that said, know thyself.
That's it. Philosophy,
So it's going to be a little bit of a broad question, but someone who wants to take one more step into knowing their self. Obviously, you mentioned meditation, but can you give me some kind of tool maybe, or technique, something practical? Because it's lovely to say you need to know yourself and know who you are, but not everyone can turn their attention inwards and look inside, because the chatter of the mind is too much. So what's your thoughts on that?
Yeah, it's a good question. And that was my question for 20 years.
Now you know the answer, so please share.
It really was. Look, the biggest breakthrough for me was what I shared earlier, was the 𝘁𝗸𝗄 stuff, the human design concept. And I saw that on a documentary 3 or 4 years ago. And they were doing the analysis of 2 very well-known people. And I was gobsmacked at the level of detail it went into about those individuals. And I've done personality profiling many times, right? And it didn't feel right, doing DISC and Myers-Briggs and Enneagram and Gallup, and through different corporate jobs that I've had and military. And, you go through this testing, it feels like they're trying to put a label on you. And I was at the question, it's just like, well, I could have answered that question in one of 10 ways, depending on the scenario. And the response was always, just answer the question generally. It's just like, well, there's no general, right? There's no general response, because how I deal with a certain situation in a intimate relationship would be different with my boss, for example, or one of my subordinates, or with a friend. And different bosses I might deal with differently depending on their personality. So it never fit, and I never bought into the system, even though I was labeled and I had the same system but different labels every time. And I thought, this doesn't make sense. How can they do this? So that got me curious. And I did meditation. I learned meditation, I think started 15 years ago. And tried all sorts of meditation, and guided meditations in particular, and transcendental meditation and visualization meditations and all sorts. And I found what works best for me, which isn't necessarily going to be best for the next person, was contemplation. Just silence, sitting in silence, going for a walk in nature, and then learning to listen to myself. That's really hard to do when you first start, and it's frustrating because you don't know what's right and what's wrong. I know the most common complaint I hear about people learning to meditate is, I'm not a very good meditator, right? Because there's this, we're always doubting ourselves. But it's really simple. We just got to listen to ourselves, not the mind. Learn to listen to when the mind's talking versus listening to your intuition or your body or your spirit, your soul, whatever you want to call it. So that's the process. That takes time. It's not going to happen overnight. But I would invite everybody to explore themselves on that level, because we're so connected on technology these days, but we're so disconnected from ourselves. And that disconnection from ourselves is leading to all these problems in the world, and there's depression and these addictions and all these things that can be fixed very simply. And it's not to discount that there are genuine addictions and problems out there. Absolutely, I acknowledge that. But the disconnection from ourself, from our spirit, from the planet, from consciousness, this disconnection completely, it's like we're robots sometimes. So of course we can't listen. Of course we can't hear what's going on, because we're so disconnected, because we're so connected to technology that we've lost that ability to hear ourselves. So that's the process I would recommend. And then starting to pick up some books and start to read into things on those topics, how you can learn this process of listening to yourself. Go to a few meditation trainings if you like. Read some books, explore yourself, especially in the shower, because there's this energy flowing in the ocean. There's this energy, there's all these positive ions coming out of the body, and explore that. But the superpower, the real kind of magic bullet for me was the human design system, which gave me in words an explanation of who I was. And that changed everything. That stopped me searching through personal development programs. That gave me clarity on who Paul Shepherd was or is. And any courses I do now are very specific to achieving a certain outcome. Right. So now it might be, if I want to go and run YouTube ads, I'd go into a specific course on how to run YouTube ads.
Sure.
Very specific to an intention that I have. If I want to do video production, as in put myself on videos for my marketing and my training and my courses, then I would learn to become a better presenter. Very specific training with an end goal in mind. So I wouldn't consider myself on the personal development world so much anymore, because now it's laser focused courses that are going to help me achieve that level of fulfillment and achieve my mission, so to speak. So I hope that answers the question.
Yes, it does. Understanding. And I've seen before with speaking with other people that kind of line going from personal development, at some point it merges or turns into a spiritual, in the very, very broad sense of the word. Okay, so I didn't use the word before, but what you have been described could very well be described in that term. So I think it is inevitable for someone to, because that's who we are really. It's not, yes, we are the person, but what is the person? There is something behind which we need to explore more.
Absolutely. We're spiritual beings having a human experience, and we just weren't told that when we were born, unfortunately.
Thank you for listening to this first part of the conversation with Paul Shepherd. Tune in to the next episode, 108, for the second half of this fascinating discussion. Thank you for listening. If you enjoyed this podcast, please subscribe and rate it on Apple Podcasts, and also share this episode with someone who you think will benefit from it. If you want to find out more about what I do and gain access to exclusive content, join my Facebook group, Personal Development Mastery. The link is in the show notes, or you can simply type bit.ly/PDM group. And until next time, stand out, don't fit in,